Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at the 7:31 and introduce myself. Most of you know me. I'm Trudy Kanapka, and I am the co-president. Veronica is called away. She may be able to jump in here a little bit, but she wasn't quite sure. So I am going to try my hardest to live up to the standards that she has put for us on these, but this is not my forte of leading a meeting, but I'm going to do the best I can. So I wanted to start out welcoming everybody, and I know that your time is valuable, and I really appreciate it. We appreciate what you add to this meeting, so we'll get started with that. I don't see Patrick on the call. I don't see him here anywhere for the student council report. We can come back to it, circle back around if he does come on. So we'll go right on to the facilities liaison report from Melissa, if you wouldn't mind starting us out with that.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I don't have much today. We're in exam season. Teachers and students are focused on that. Teachers doing a lot of grading, students doing a lot of studying. Tomorrow, also students can potentially declare exam exemptions should they qualify for that opportunity. I did want to mention Mr. Tony Navarre, along with the study hall supervisors, have really great opportunities for students to come together and study in Cocoa and Cram. They did that this morning at 6:50 a.m. to 7:50 a.m. I believe they did that after school as well, and then do have another opportunity, same time. So again, 6:50 a.m. tomorrow at the high school. I believe it's in the cafeteria. Maybe if I'm incorrect, Mr. Ebert can weigh in on that. But really great opportunity for kids to get together, study as well. Moving forward, I think I mentioned it last time, but every Wednesday, students would also have the ability, so beyond exam season, to get together for these focus sessions that Mr. Navarre has put together. A lot of the tutors are there just to support students kind of on a regular basis. And that's open to all students. So maybe you can encourage your child to attend those sessions. Then on Monday, we have our review sessions where we go through to meet with students in periods 1 through 5, and we'll have our first 2 exams for periods 1 and 2. And that'll be a normal schedule, meaning we'll end at our typical time. Infinite Campus will also close on Monday for students and families, and I believe it opens mid-morning on December 9th. When the grades will be available. And then Tuesday would be our last 3 exams for periods 3, 4, and 5 with a noon dismissal, followed by going into Thanksgiving break. And our staff returns on that Monday to prepare for the next trimester, and we'll get together with students again to start Tri-2 on Tuesday, December 3rd. So that's all I had, besides hoping everybody has a nice Thanksgiving break with their families.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. We really appreciate that.
Yep.
I think I know what you're going to say usually, but you come up with all these things that I'm like, oh, that's going on or happening. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And then we'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Ebert.
Thanks, Trudy. Thanks, Melissa. Great job. Hi, everybody. Great to see you all. I'll start by saying it was sure a mess this morning outside the school. I don't know if you were dropped somebody off or around, but I don't know if I want to use the word chaos, but it was pretty busy this morning. That snow, although we expected it, it definitely hit at the right time. I had given a message to everybody near the end of the day on what is it today? Thursday. Sorry, yesterday, Wednesday. And just said, hey, we've got to plan ahead. We've got to drive slowly. We've got to steer clear of the cars in front of us and behind us, and try to get to school safe and on time. And while overall we were safe, we weren't necessarily on time today across the school. I will say that. But I was ushering people in the door for about 20 minutes after 7:25. But we got the day going, and I think the snow is probably gone by this point, right? So all in all, it worked out. Melissa talked about the end of the trimester timeline. Appreciate her reminding everybody of what the expectations have been and what we've got. We got last day of the trimester tomorrow, right? Before we take exams on Monday and Tuesday. If students are exempting, they got to let our teachers know by tomorrow in order to do those things. The experience should have been the same across the board for your student and all students across their 4 or 5 classes for what the expectations were. It is going to be Thanksgiving break. I'll usher in some gratitude to you all, to our Homestead community, to our faculty and staff. I think we've had a really good trimester. Looking forward to trimester 2. Trimester 2 is a long one. It always is, right? It's dark out. It's cold. While I think we look forward to winter break, that comes and goes, right? And then we've just got a long run of time before we get to third trimester. But first trimester went really well. I think second trimester will go just as well. So looking forward to that. Student schedules are available on Infinite Campus. So they can check out their schedules and know where they're going. There's always some slight changes around the building just based on what my needs are for staffing classrooms. But I've got everything set and kids should be knowing where they're going to be going. Yes, the trimester ends and we go into a long break, but there are classes like Melissa teaches that are AP classes, right? That extend into second trimester. As always, you hear it from me, the expectation is no homework over break. I know it's a nice natural break with the trimester, but you could see it in an AP class where it just continues on, but that's just not how we do things. It's a break for everybody to spend some time away from school and with their families and doing whatever it is they need to be doing to make sure they're ready to go for December 3rd. Students are going to get an email from me and most of their teachers before the end of the trimester, just to try to give a survey, just to try to give us some understanding of their experience in the classroom. I say it here often, but I'll repeat it. It is our goal as a Homestead school community for all students to feel seen and heard, for them to build connections to the adults in their lives at school, and also to be able to build connections to their peers. Melissa does a great job trying to ensure systems are in place in her room for that to take place. And so do other teachers around the building. So I'll be surveying kids just to help them or help me and us better understand what their experience was like this trimester, so we can continue to get better and continue to focus on that relational foundation, which opens up students to their learning and promotes positive behavior. That's the type of school we want to be in and want for our kids. There are a couple things happening in counseling over the next month of December. Obviously, December's a shorter month with not starting until the 3rd and then being off around winter break. But there'll be small group junior conferences that are taking place the week or the days of December 10th, 11th, and 12th. These meetings cover timely information for our juniors as they continue working on and planning for their next steps, after high school. We'll talk about options for life after high school, connect to their Zello course plan or Zello to their course planning for next year. Some of the work that they've done already in their ACP homerooms. They'll learn about the college search tools in Naviance, which is that free tool that we have for everybody. We'll do some planning for ACT testing. Kids were able to pick up their pre-ACT packets today. I think I mentioned here the last month that we had a delay in getting those results back. And it was not on our end, it was on the ACT's end. They had scored some things wrong, so they had to reprint and send us back. So kids have those to be able to develop some planning for, and then begin discussions around scholarships and financial aid, and simply raise awareness of the timeline for post-high school planning. Not all juniors are focused on what it is that they're doing when they leave high school. It's our job to kick it into gear now in December with that group. So that's happening. Small group junior conferences, and I said connecting Zello to course planning. Before we know it, it's going to be course registration season for the 2025-26 school year, right? Seems a long ways off, but it's coming. And so I don't think we're meeting in December. I don't think, right? So what I'll be doing in early January is I'll have a video out for students, alerting them to some of the new courses that exist as long as the school board approves of them in early December, reminding them of what our expectations are in terms of the amount of classes you sign up for, what your graduation requirements are. And hopefully ensure that people are making choices that allow them to have the right level of rigor, yet also be able to maintain, some sort of stability in the things that they do outside of school. We know we want well-rounded students, and so do colleges, right? So we'll continue to talk about balance in our schedules as we get to that in January. Looking forward to those times. Also, in the next month, Mrs. Navarre will be meeting with all ninth graders in small groups to discuss their course options for the remaining 3 years of their high school career. So all the freshman kids will be able to get their courses essentially signed up prior to the registration time. They'll be asked to dig into their academic planners, really work through their stuff through Infinite Campus, and have conversations with Mrs. Navarre and a few other people. I know I like to go in those meetings when I have the opportunity to do so, just to hear what kids are thinking about their classes for next year and provide some feedback as well. Always a good time thinking about that. As quickly as the fall sports season ended, the winter sports season is kicked off. A couple weeks already for some of the sports. And we've got some events coming up related to the winter sports season. Hockey is playing, I think it's Tuesday is their first game, I know. I'm not sure if we've got anything else prior to that. Girls basketball is playing as well very soon. Theater program is working through musical auditions for the Pirates of Penzance. That's our new musical for February. Looking forward to that. And our student council had Patrick been here, I'm sure he would have told you about the important things that they're working on. They've got the toy drive coming up, and I'll just put a plug in for December 5th. That's the Miracle Minute, where they'll get on the announcements and essentially try to drum up some cash from kids to donate to the toy drive. And they will then go out and purchase stuff with Mrs. Pfaff and Mrs. Ackman to support the donation drive that they're focused on through the toy drive. But I will say, we in our spirit of giving at Homestead, we don't just have a toy drive going on right now. We've got a book drive, a school supplies drive, and a coat drive. There's all sorts of good things going on. So if you have any of those things at home, or you can put a plug in to anybody else to donate toys, books, school supplies, or coats. I know the kids who are overseeing those through some of our different clubs would be happy to collect. Essentially, for all of them, there's a bin in the front entrance for collection. So again, busy stuff, and a great time of year to be at Homestead. That is all I have, Trudy. I'd happily take some questions if anybody had any.
Right, yeah. I have one quick question. This student survey that you were talking about, is that a formalized survey, or is that just teachers that are asking, or staff that's asking?
Yeah, so I'll ask some questions about the student experience in terms of building connections to their peers and building connections to their teachers, whether they have the opportunity to develop community in their classrooms. It's nothing fancy. It's a Google form survey that I'll send out. A number of our teachers also will, Melissa can speak for herself, but a number of our teachers also will ask students about their experience in the classroom. Through a survey at the last day of the trimester, so that we can get better at building relationships and learning more about our kids.
Great.
Yeah.
And I am excited to hear about all these drives. I know that Becky is very good at getting those into our short kilt
Yep.
so we can get that out to the masses. And even if the students maybe don't notice it, the parents might see it on there and nudge them along of donating. So
And that's
great.
why I'm,
Love
and
to
that's
see
why I'm
it.
bringing it up. We need some partnership with the parents. There's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Eric? No, you're pretty good at just laying it all out there.
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good. Well, stick around for Dr. Joynt. If
Yeah.
anybody has any questions for me along with that, I'm fine with that too. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much. Oh, and I do see Dr. Joynt now. There he is. Hello. And we are excited to hear from you today. And I think you're pretty excited about delivering what you have to say about the referendum and the operating referendum and the passing and how we're going to go forward with that. So you have the floor now.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yes. Yep. You're fantastic.
Then let me just
You should
arrange
be able to
things.
share if you have anything to share on the screen.
I should be able to. Okay, hold on. I do.
Great.
I come prepared.
I thought so.
Okay. Thanks for your flexibility with me here. Many of you, as I'm looking at who's in the room, can you see my screen? Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can. No.
Not yet.
Oh, how about now?
It's coming. Yes.
All right, perfect. I see some familiar faces in the room. Many of you know that I am not just the superintendent of schools in this community, but also a parent, proud community member. I've got 2 boys. I've got 3 boys total, but 2 at the high school. And I do volunteer a couple evenings a week to help coach. And so I'm here in my sweatshirt and hoodie and said that I'd be a little late and trying to make it. So thanks for being flexible. I do have some exciting news in terms of following up. I was asked to speak a little bit about what comes next now that we're on the other side of the operating referendum, and sharing that message is a lot easier with the referendum having passed than it otherwise would have been. That said, one of the first messages I got from a fellow superintendent that has managed a successful operating referendum was, now the real work begins. So for those that were closest to it, if you felt like, or from your perspective, getting to the ballot question, getting to the polls, getting the results was hard, the real work begins now as we have to determine how best to be purposeful, thoughtful, and responsible with the additional revenue. And that additional revenue is limited. And so we also have to keep a long view, perspective on what's to come after 4 years when that operating referendum revenue comes to a close. So I'll start with the here and now and share a little bit of data with you. The easy part, or what was reported on that night, was the fact that the operating referendum, $26.4 million in additional revenue through local taxes for the next 4 years, passed with 52% approval. One of the recommendations from the community task force that came together prior to the board engaging and approving the ballot question was that instead of looking at April 2024, the board consider, if they were going to consider approving a ballot question for the operating referendum, a November 2024 date, noting that it was a presidential election. I've heard different opinions on this, but the strategy, or what we felt was most important, was that we got an authentic result from our community, and that meant ensuring that as many voters were active and participating in an operating referendum question as is possible. So here on the side, worth noting, over 93% of registered voters in Mequon and Thiensville voted on the referendum question. That is far and away the highest number of people that have voted on such a question for the school district here. When you go back into time, this was the 6th referendum question. I'll note there are 2 different types of referendums. There are facilities referendums, and a facilities referendum would be the type of referendum that our community, specifically our parent community right now, is most familiar with. And then there are operating referendums. Facilities referendums are additional revenue to pay for a project. You can think of the 2020 facilities referendum where additions were made at elementary schools, safety and security enhancements were made at all schools, etc. I have a list of those 6 referendums for you here. So the first one that the community considered was back in 1998. That one passed. That was a facilities referendum, and that mainly entailed work at the high school. The high school increased in size by quite a bit with that facilities referendum. And if you look at the number of voters here, we had just over 5,000 voters. I'm here to tell you there was an operating referendum on a ballot in front of the community in 2002. I do know that it failed, and we have been chasing results from that. I know that they existed. That was a long time ago, and we've called the city, we've called the village, we've called the historical society. We're looking for those results so that I can report on them, but we did have an operating referendum that failed then. We also had an operating referendum attempted in 2006. That one failed. There was about, I believe it failed with a 43% yes vote. The results of those operating referendums, or a portion of those results of those operating referendums not passing, included closing one of our 4 elementary schools. The Rangeline Community Center used to be one of 4 elementary schools. That was closed. The district had some land that it sold, amongst other things. And then the community didn't consider referendums for a little while. It was in 2015 that a facilities referendum passed with just under 7,500 voters for that. That was a facilities referendum that enhanced building safety and security as we looked at entrances and where offices existed in our buildings, and did some work in our inquiry and collaboration centers. And then many of you are familiar with the 2020 facilities referendum. That was our previous high in terms of participation at the polls, with over 10,000 voters. And that's my long way of getting to this last 2024 operating referendum, which passed 52% of the votes with nearly 19,000 voters. So far and away, if we were looking for high participation, this was representative of that. A couple other data points worth noting. If you were paying attention as I ran through those past referendums, the facilities referendums that were in front of this community and considered passed, operating referendums had not. So this is the first operating referendum that did pass. And so when you compare that to the results that we're aware of in 2006, while it was a 52% approval, and that's real tight, it was 9% more support for the operating referendum than what we had previously experienced, and that's a pretty big number worth noting. The average difference between yes and no votes across the elections for referendums in MTSD that we have the data on gets us near 13 percentage points difference. And so again, just noting that this was very tight. The difference was 4 percentage points. That said, it received the majority of the votes, and as I said all along, my intent personally, the board's hope, our hope as a district leadership team, was that we just informed, we provided enough information that as many people as were interested and could possibly be informed to make their decision were. And so, yes, the result is a very positive one for the school district. The question I was asked, or the focus being on the other side of the referendum, is now what's next? The operational referendum passed, what's next? And this shouldn't be entirely new to those who've been tuning in on some of our communications. Regardless of the result of the operational referendum, we know and we plan to present a balanced budget to the community in July of 2025 with the additional revenue created from the operating referendum. That job's different than what it would have been, but still challenging in that, and I'll share with you, the operating referendum doesn't cover all costs. There are still decisions that need to be made, and we need to be responsible and cognizant of the fact that we can't continue to increase expenditures when, as we look out 4 years from now, we'll have to be determining what our situation is as it relates to our budget. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But with the additional funding, we have the ability to balance that budget without tapping into reserves. So if not, we were scheduled to use a really hefty chunk of fund balance. From a board perspective, the intent is, the goal is to keep a fund balance somewhere between 20 and 25% of what is Fund 10 or our general budget. That would have dipped down to 12 or 13%, and most likely negatively impacted. And you see here in the fifth bullet point, our AAA bond rating, which I will also talk about in a little bit. With the additional funding, we have the ability to move forward in our plans for developing a competitive compensation system for teachers and increasing starting wages for support staff members. I've shared with many people the challenges that we've had with our support staff getting paid at an hourly rate, as some of the private businesses around us have increased that hourly wage to the point that if you roll into Qdoba to order a burrito for lunch, you are standing across from people that are earning a higher hourly rate than some of our support staff members. And so we have work to do there. Healthcare costs are a gigantic challenge, as those costs only continue to increase. So we'll be able to better manage those, not without having to curb some of those increases. But having the additional expenditures certainly helps, as we're seeing rates increase some, up and around above 20%. We'll also be able to move forward with some delayed maintenance projects. I'll unpack those for you that we had put on hold. We'd put them on hold to get to the operating referendum and determine whether or not we were going to be able to do them or not. So we were putting what projects we could on hold to minimize the projected budget deficit. All along with that, and I mentioned it for healthcare costs, we're going to have to manage increased operational expenses, the cost of transportation that we contract for, our cleaning services, food services. All of those services that we contract are also increasing in cost as everybody is managing and navigating inflation. Besides what we'll be able to do with the money that is generated from the operating referendum, we have budgeting to do. So to present a balanced budget, we're going to implement another round of zero-based budgeting across our district buildings and departments. That means we're going to continue to consider opportunities to both reduce operating expenses while increasing revenue. While the budget deficit doesn't loom as large as it did for the next 4 years, it will be there on the other end. And so we've got to make important and informed decisions in being responsible with what funding we have. It's going to be really important that we continue to advocate to state policymakers to increase spendable dollars for public education. If that happens, it eliminates the need or minimizes the need for school districts to go to their communities with an operating referendum. And we'll, as we learn more and finalize budgets for 25-26, have to communicate specific needs to our support organizations and people in the community who fundraise on behalf of the district. Excuse me. I want to unpack all of that slide for you for a little bit here. I'm going to start with a visual, and the numbers I'm realizing here are a little bit difficult to see, especially for me who's not wearing his glasses. But the lighter blue bars here represent the projected budget deficit with the numbers we had in November of 2023. So a year ago, when we projected forward based on what we knew, made some assumptions based on the variables that influence the budget, you see here in the 24-25, if I use my cursor, does that point things out? Yeah, okay. In the 24-25 school year, you see about a $4.5 million budget deficit that, as you track it all the way 4 years from now, 2027, 2028, becomes a $6.5 million budget deficit. That was the purpose, that was the reasoning behind a ballot question with an operating referendum question on it. The darker blue then signifies the revenue gained as a result of the operating referendum. So where we put some projects on hold and paused, like what I said, in some of our maintenance projects, in putting hold on our employee compensation systems, we have some money here in 24-25 to put those projects back into place, get them kick-started again. And then again, the operating referendum doesn't eliminate all of our projected budget deficits, makes it more manageable than it was. You see a projected $150,000 deficit here then as we plan for the 25-26 school year. It changes a little, but not much for 26-27 based on the variables that we have plugged in and know now, and then begins that increase with a $750,000 amount in 2027-2028. So this is a slide that I think is really important. It not only shares the significance of the revenue that's generated from the operating referendum, but provides a really important reminder to all of us that the work is not done as we continue forward. So what are some of the things I've talked about and what do they mean? Balancing the budget without tapping into reserves. Why is that important? Well, in balancing our budget, we're able to maintain that AAA bond rating and be responsible to our community with the tax dollars that we have. We share each and every year that the budget we submit to the board for approval should be and will be completely aligned to our strategic plan, that with our process for building that budget that will engage stakeholders so that school board members can recognize the integrity of the spending plan throughout the year and its ability to support organizational improvement. That means that we have already started that process. November is the year each year that we begin the process of starting the budget planning for the upcoming year. And what we are doing now is preparing with the board for some opportunities to gain input from our school district stakeholders, including you. So we are drafting out board budget making priorities. The board will work on these at board meetings. We'll solidify these priorities and include them coming up next month in our strategic planning survey. So parallel to this, we were also waiting on the other side of the operating referendum to engage our stakeholders in designing our next 3-year strategic plan. We'll include in that community survey the opportunity for any and all community members to rank the budget making priorities to help inform the work we do through our zero-based budgeting process. What is zero-based budgeting? It is different from our traditional budget approach in that in our traditional budget approach, we were costing out or working off of past budgets to provide each school and department or cost center, as we call them, a budget to work within. And the difference here with zero-based budgeting is we start from zero. We examine all the costs and benefits for everything that's done at each of those cost centers, buildings and departments. We determine what are we legally mandated to do, what must we do beyond that in order to be a K-12 public school district, and what should we be doing in order to maintain the services that we have? What do we consider that we'd like to do, but maybe can only do if there's funds available? So we look at every line of the budget, at every cost center to determine where things are prioritized and what we can do based on the funding that's available to us. I mentioned that with the additional revenue from the operating referendum, we'll be able to maintain a competitive compensation system for employees while it's in place. What does that mean? Well, strategic compensation in our district means mainly 2 things. One, that we're seeking to reward excellence in practice and acknowledging or correlating pay to the work that our employees do. Our focus is around student achievement and growth and our long-term success. And we recognize with that our community responds most favorably to a compensation system that rewards that student growth and achievement. So connecting the compensation of our employees to outcomes is something that we will work to do in designing a new compensation system. From a teacher standpoint, that means that we have already conducted a market investigation with the operating referendum having, we know the results. We'll engage teachers as we review different compensation model and options within it. We will prioritize, of course, cost of living increases from year to year with what money we have available for employee compensation, and then build on that in finalizing and implementing a compensation system for the 25-26 school year and beyond. That's the teacher side of things. From a support staff standpoint, we're also conducting or scheduled to conduct a market investigation. And what we're looking at there is not only prioritizing cost of living increases every year, but ensuring that those hourly wages can be competitive with other hourly wages in other school districts around the area. Excuse me. I mentioned healthcare costs. Important to note that employee salaries and benefits, when combined, comprise approximately 75 to 80% of the school district's budget. So these are two really important areas as we consider strategy and ways to move forward. We've done a little bit of this work already, again, recognizing that regardless of the outcome of the operating referendum, we are going to have budget deficits to manage. We just completed the open enrollment window for employee healthcare benefits. We made some changes that will help minimize the increase. I mentioned a 20 to 24% increase that we were trying to minimize, and we were pretty successful at doing it. We will transition our staff into a tiered network of providers. It causes minimal disruption in that over 80% of our staff were already utilizing providers from what will be the Tier 1 network, and all of the providers do live in Tier 2. It's just a difference in costs should an employee choose to maintain or to utilize a provider from that Tier 2 cost. We're looking at reducing the cash and lieu benefit, though maintaining alignment with some of our comparable districts or competitor districts when we look at retaining and hiring new staff. So we've done some work there. I will note that for the 23-24 fiscal year, we had transitioned into a self-funded health insurance model. And so we did have our first year in learning and experiencing that world. It helped us curb a 20% increase in health insurance in 2023. But it also comes with some level of risk. So we've been working with the board and our benefit partners to determine what monthly monitoring needs to look like that helps us manage our self-funded health insurance. And so making lots of decisions in healthcare, managing healthcare costs that help us curb the increase. I think it would be hard to cut money as the increases are happening at a higher rate than we're able to from year to year manage, though it's something that is our reality and that we're going to have to figure out how to do. I mentioned delaying maintenance projects, and I get when I say that some questions like, what is it that we've delayed? And so I have a short list for you of some of the bigger items. I'll start by sharing one that was not on the list when we delayed maintenance projects. This is the high school PTSO meeting, and this first list item might mean less to people that are simply elementary and middle school, or just middle school parents. If your child talked about a curious odor in the 900 wing, that was true. And so back in that first facilities referendum where they built onto the high school, we finally were able to cut into the floor and find a pipe that was the problem. The odor was never a dangerous one, but it was certainly a foul one, and is going to require us to pull some of that piping, reroute it up out of the building, above the roof and back down. That's costly. And that was an unplanned expense, certainly one that had to happen. We have submitted insurance claims for it, but that is pending in status with a TBD cost. As such, if the colors are showing up on your screen at home, the bottom 4 items on this list are in gray and on hold. We're waiting to determine whether insurance will cover the work that we already had to do in the 900 wing at the high school. With the operating referendum passing, We are scheduled for parking lot restriping, which we're sorely in need of at our elementary and middle schools. We're sorely in need of it at the high school too, but we're in need of more work than that, and work that can't really get done in November based on the weather. So that is to come. That's down at the bottom, parking lot repairs and painting at the high school. We have pending and plan for some window replacement at Oriole Lane, where we still have some windows that have wood frames and need replacing. You see a light gray here, some of, or the majority of what is scheduled, district-wide security camera upgrades, replacements, and additions. And we're keeping a third of that project on hold, again, waiting to determine what the insurance company will cover from our 900 wing work at the high school. We're working on water systems that have presented some challenges in some of our buildings, specifically Donges Bay, Oriole Lane, and Stephan. The buildings were built at different times. Those are the 3 buildings that are heated by hot water that in the very coldest months are challenged. And so we're looking at first at Donges Bay, piloting a glycol hot water system, which will help with some of that issue. If that works well, we'll look at Oriole Lane and Stephan next. We have some roofing maintenance to do at the 2 middle schools and high schools that is pending. Obviously, Wisconsin weather has something to do with that. And we will have the funds to continue our work in ensuring that each building has an emergency power system should power go out. Wilson and Homestead are in good shape. Work to be done at the other 4 schools. Again, what else is on here is important and was scheduled to be done, but in ensuring that we present a balanced budget at the end of the year, we've got to determine what the costs are associated with some of the work that already had to be done, and we'll determine when and if we can do those other projects then still on the list. I'm going to start to move a little faster until I get to the biennial budget, recognizing the time. I mentioned that the additional revenue from the operating referendum will help us protect our AAA bond rating. We are one of only 3 school districts in the state that has that AAA bond rating. That's significant because it cuts down on our borrowing costs. It increases our financial flexibility. It provides a positive public perception and builds trust for those that we're doing a good job with the money that the school district manages. It's appealing to our investors, provides lower interest rates on our borrowing, and gives us that ability to short-term borrow, which we have to do every year. We have to short-term borrow in order to cover the couple months at the beginning of each year that we're still waiting on the state to provide us their funds for the school district, and then gives us better ability to navigate financial uncertainty. That was really at risk if the operating referendum hadn't passed, again, because one of the variables considered in maintaining that rating is the percentage of money we have in fund balance. And if we would have needed to use the reserves, that would have dipped to a level that I think would have made maintaining the AAA bond rating pretty difficult. And then so that's kind of what is done with, not kind of, that is what is planned to do here in the 24-25, the immediate school year with regard to the additional revenue. I hope that I've set the table to share, and with the real work beginning, we now are working with additional revenue that has an expiration date on it. And so those sizable budget deficits only get bigger if the operating referendum is not maintained. The easiest way to move forward would to be eliminate the need for a local operating referendum. And we have 2 chances to do that. The first one this year, and then one 2 years from now, as we need to advocate for more state-provided spendable dollars for public education. The state of Wisconsin engages or works at the state level on biennial budgets, meaning they cover biennial 2 years. And the next biennial budget will be determined by July 1, 2025. That work recommendations are being made to state policymakers now that the elections have been finalized. People will start getting back into offices, and work will begin on the biennial budget in Madison. I have three things that we've already provided, and by we, the legislative committee of the board has already provided or advocated for, and we've advocated to the Department of Public Instruction, who makes a recommendation to our state policymakers regarding the upcoming biennial budget, and then they'll spend months determining it. And again, it all ends or is supposed to end on July 1. The first thing we advocated for, I won't read all of this to you, but is increased per pupil funding. And what's really important here is that when we're advocating for increased per pupil funding that takes that in spendable dollars. And so there are times you will hear that the amount of money the state is providing per pupil was increased. And if that's not spendable dollars, instead it's providing tax relief, meaning the amount of money that goes to the school, our school district or any school district doesn't change. The percentage of it that comes from the state versus local taxpayers increases for the state, which again, I mentioned I'm a community member and a dad. As a property owner here in Mequon, having a home here, I'm certainly happy for tax relief. But I think it's important to note that if it's not spendable dollars, the school district isn't benefiting from that. It's simply money coming from a different place. And so we're looking for an increase in categorical per pupil aid. I put down at the bottom of this paragraph here, that is currently at $742 per pupil in the state. It has been lagging inflationary increases since 2012. And just to give you an idea of how that has an effect, if that increase would result in an increase from $742 per pupil, and this is the first bullet point under examples, to $1,113 per pupil over the biennium, the next 2 years, the need for that operating referendum or the revenue being generated from the operating referendum could be cut in half. So this is an important opportunity for me to share. While the operating referendum was approved, the district does not have to spend all of what is allowed in the additional revenue generated through the operating referendum. So if we can influence the amount of money being provided to school districts at the state level, we won't need to use as much as what was asked for, as much as what was approved with the operating referendum. I included the second bullet point here. If you really wanted the operating referendum to go all the way away in one fell swoop, the state would be paying about a little over $2,200 per pupil over the next 2 years. We're also advocating for an increase in special education funding. That might seem unique if you haven't heard that before. Why the specific focus on special education funding? Well, we're required by law to deliver on the services that are called upon in students' individualized education plans. It is the law that we deliver on what is required in services for those plans. If you looked on paper when decisions were originally made decades and decades ago, the state of Wisconsin had the intent of paying for 60% of those costs. Interestingly, the feds, the national money was scheduled to pay for 40%. So if you add those two numbers together, 100% of the cost of special education on paper between the state and our nation is to be covered. Instead, the state covers about 30%, and from the feds, we get less than 10%. And so we are advocating for an increase beyond that 30%. I'd like to see all 100% of those costs covered. You'll hear different numbers. I think the lowest number you'll hear for those that are advocating for an increase will be 60%. But just to put it in perspective, I shared with you the budget deficits that we were looking at. Here, if we look at 23-24 last school year in our special education costs, our total expenses for special education costs last school year were a little short of $9 million. The state reimbursed us a little over $2 million. And so what we have to do in order to cover the rest of those legally mandated costs is move money from Fund 10, that's the general education fund, over to pay for the special education costs. That was $5.5 million last year. So when we talk about, we were looking at a $4.7 to $6 million deficit for the 24-25 school year. That would have done it. And so I think it's really important that we recognize that an increase in special education funding, even if people just did what they said they were going to do decades ago, would not have us in the situation that we're in today. The third area that I wanted to call your attention to, we're advocating for the state policymakers to raise the low revenue limit ceiling. And so school districts all have a revenue limit ceiling. There is a minimum amount for that low revenue ceiling. It was actually increased with the last biennial budget to $11,000. So no district has a revenue ceiling that isn't at least $11,000 per pupil. You see here in the chart below that our revenue limit per member is $11,890. So we did not benefit from that increase in the low revenue ceiling. Other school districts did, not all school districts. The district just to our north, Cedarburg, did. And you can see that the state average is above that of Mequon-Thiensville at $12,500 per pupil. Boy, do we tout where we rank in this state when it comes to outcomes. And I can tell you, I can't think of an area that we rank 260 out of 421 public school districts in this state, except here in the revenue limit per member. So if there was an increase to that low revenue ceiling, we'd say $12,700 per pupil would bring, I think, all districts within about $10,000 of each other. And that would be good for all school districts in the state, but it would certainly benefit us as well. And so I share those three areas. Not any one of them has to be the only. I think that our state policymakers could look across all three of those areas, do some things that would really help us. And I've been told I'm an optimist, but I believe with the right work done at the state level, there isn't a need to go back to this community for an operating referendum, but it's really going to take people with a perspective that things need to change to share their perspectives and let state policymakers know that there needs to be a change for funding of public education. So I'm working with the board's legislative committee and planning communications and engagement on those topics. We will update our legislative platform and our communications toolkit for anybody that's interested in accessing and using it. And we will be planning some information sessions through the winter and spring. Again, this is going to be a really important winter and spring season as that biennial budget. We won't get another shot to help share our perspectives and advocate for our needs until then the winter in 2027. So this is, in my mind, a really important opportunity to take advantage of. I believe, yes, it does. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or if anybody has anything they want to share in terms of comments. I consider myself to be a pretty decent listener.
Dr. Joynt, I so appreciate you, and I think I speak for most of our, or maybe all of our parents, that we really appreciate the energy that you put into this and the school board and all the administration. I'm extremely impressed at how this was carried out, and I think that the standards that we've upheld are going to continue, and I'm completely confident. I'm an optimist also, so I do appreciate that. Are there any questions from anybody that's here? We do record this, and well, probably should have told you that beforehand, but and we do share this with our full membership. So we're hopeful that everybody that clicks on to our what's recorded, that they get the same message that we did, that this is completely under control and that things are going forward. And we just really are excited about that.
Well, I thank everybody that's here. Again, regardless, regardless of how people voted on the operating referendum, I'm just pleased that we are in a community that people are willing to be informed, consider alternatives, and make their voice heard. And I think it's important that we don't just share those perspectives within our own proverbial walls here in Mequon and Thiensville, that we have the opportunity to help influence some decision making at the state level that can only help us as a community here in the work that we do to support one another.
Right. Well, I think if the 93% of voters that came out is a representation of how engaged our community is, that's great. I was blown away by that number.
Yep.
Great. All right. If there are no more questions, we appreciate everything you've done. If you want to bow out, we'd understand that. We're going to go on with some of our other nuts and bolts of our meeting, of our notes and some other committee reports and stuff. So we greatly appreciate your time. You're welcome to stay, but if you feel you need to move on, you go ahead. Okay.
I am in the middle of transitions, different places, so I am going to duck out, but I very much
Great.
appreciate the work that all of you do and the fact that you're here, and thank you, truly.
Great. All right. You have a good day, evening.
Thank you, you too.
All right. We're going to go on and go into the reports of our meeting, the officer reports. And the first one we'd like to go into is the minutes. And Jenny has shared those minutes with us, and we'd like to go ahead and a motion to accept those minutes from the October meeting.
This is Melissa, so moved.
Yay, there it goes. Okay. Did anybody need time to look at them, or? I think we're set, and those have been accepted then. Thank you, Nancy. The other one, the next one is the treasurer's report that has been provided by Jenny Espino. And she said that there was nothing she needed to add to it. Did you think of anything that you needed to add to that, Jenny? Jenna?
I have our monthly kind of just rundown of the bank balance and stuff. That's our budget. But basically, in October, we had a beginning bank balance of $45,583.24. We got deposits in the amount of $3,493.77, comprised of donations for staff appreciation, membership fees, Highlander Fund, and conference dinner donations. We had withdrawals and expenses, which consisted of $950.17 for homecoming, insurance, and our area council fees. And then our ending bank balance was $48,126.84. So that is all.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
This is Melissa again, so moved.
And second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is moved. The next thing is the president's report, and I'll be giving that this evening. There's not a whole lot to report. Everybody's kind of put their 2 cents in, so it's good. It's good. I don't have a lot more to say on that. A couple things that are standing out there. We do have the Leave a Legacy Committee has been established, and they're just starting to take shape. Hopefully soon we will have the details to share what that legacy project will be, and then what that would look like for the spring. We also have the Senior Dinner Committee that's been established, and that's starting to also get some traction. That has been established for June 8th, and we have that running. Other than that, I think everything else has been represented that we've had come forward so far. Okay, we wanted to do some committee reports. The first one is short kilts. Becky, did you have anything to bring us up to speed on short kilts, how that's been handled?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. No, I don't really have anything. I mean, if there's anything that, parents or PTSO members want included, if you don't have my personal email, which is in the membership toolkit, you can always send it to that PTSO general email, and I'll make sure that it gets included.
Great. Thank you, Becky. You do a lot of
Sure.
work there, and it's really appreciated. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
The next report is the staff appreciation. And again, I'm going to talk about that one. Staff appreciation, the next event that we have coming up is going to be December 18th. Traditionally, it's been called Sweet Treats, and carry on with that, but we've tweaked a little bit. Instead of it being in the afternoon, that's going to be in the morning. This happens to be a late start for Students' Day, but teachers and staff still need to come in at their regular time. They start meetings for that first couple hours. They start them at 7:30. So we are requesting donations of the treats to be brought in, and those would be accepted at the school office the day before up till the end of the day. And it looks like it's got a lot of traction already. We're also going to throw in there some coffee. So we're hoping that we'll get donations of the coffee, like K-Cups, of all selections of coffee, hot chocolate, cider. I think you can get almost anything now in those. And then those will also carry over into the new year. We're hoping to set up like a little coffee bar there so that the staff can have access to that. So please do look at that. That's on the short kilts. Go ahead and sign up for something to bring in. Looks like we've got quite a few spots already filled, but we always need to fill that out. Okay, and then we have the teacher wish list, and Roberta is here, and she's going to help us just understand that a little bit more.
Okay. For the teacher wish list, we sent, so Melissa Blahnik sent out a Google form to all the teachers back in September, and they went ahead and they put things down that they would like, parents to maybe donate. And so it's been going very well. I went in after the last monthly meeting, PTSO meeting, and I kind of deleted everything that had already been donated. So, so now there are still quite a few items. It'd be nice, for parents to continue to donate. And what I found was interesting is that the teachers are using their Google Forms and they're resubmitting. So I'm seeing some more current things, even as, this past week, teachers are putting in requests. So that's good. Last year, what we did is we had Melissa Blahnik send it out again, like in January, and we can do that as well. But it's good to see that the teachers are, they're keeping their Google form and they're, requesting things as needed. So the teacher wish list is coming out in short kilts. And so it's, kind of clear on how to click on and then what you're supposed to do as far as labeling and dropping it off in the office, etc. So.
Yeah, I went back through it again a couple days ago, and I was really astonished. I looked at them like, oh, someone needs pencils. I've got tons of unused pencils. So just simple things like that we can probably all either, hop out and purchase when we're out, or find them that we might have a stash in our own homes. So thank you for keeping that fresh. Really appreciate that, Roberta. I'm sure the staff does also.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And I think the next one is I don't want to put her on the spot, but Linda, for the senior dinner, did you have anything to add for that? Linda Walsh?
Sorry, I wasn't ready. Ooh, yeah, you threw me there. I did get to Dana today, and everything is up to date. She has all the information. It is in the cafeteria. I know that there was some mention about the PAC, but she said in previous there's been conflict, so we're not planning that. I don't know. I don't have a lot to share other than the committee's going to start meeting in January, and we'll move forward at that time.
Okay, great. I appreciate you heading that up.
Yep, my pleasure.
Okay, great. Then we will go on to the organizational reports. The first one is come back on. There we go. Area Council, and I had the privilege of going to that meeting, and I think it's just really kind of a neat time that they come together and all the schools are represented, and there's different things that are discussed that I think all of us are interested in. The first one was Dr. Joynt did report almost everything that you needed to know and wanted to know about the referendum, the operating referendum, and I completely understand what was going on better now than I did before, so that's good. The next thing was there was a calendar committee, and they are working towards a November 25th submission of a proposed 25-26 calendar to the Board of Education. The next thing that was presented there was strategic planning. That is something that's reviewed in our district every year, and a vital component of that is a survey that should be coming out to our families in December. So they advised to just look for that, and they really want a high representation so that strategic planning has a true representation of our desires. The rec department had come forward and said that their winter spring program is out, and the registration opens up just on December 2nd. And I was astonished to hear there's 160 programs just for adults. And so that'll open up on December 2nd, so take advantage of that. We did have a guest speaker there, Lauren Crux, and she's the Executive Director of Education Services. And the thing that is high on the priority right now is the annual curriculum proposals. And she went through the process that takes, and what had come out is that there's one proposed class that's being, or one deleted class being proposed, one proposal for deleting a class, 3 classes that they're proposing to revise, and then 4 additional classes that they're going to propose. And these all go to the Board of Education on December 16th, and that they take a look at those and make some decisions. At the meeting, Shelley Burns, the school board president, also just talked about the referendum, and also gave us just a timeline on what can happen with that. MTEF, the Education Foundation, they had some good reports back to us. The first one was the Trick or Trot, raised almost $18,000, even though it was a rainy, gloomy day. So they were really happy with that. They announced that the Tartan Bash is back, and that is March 1st of 25. They will open up the ticket sales in December, and then I can't remember the date to close off. There'll be an early ticket sales, and then the prices go up after that. We did close up the give back for Piggly Wiggly, and $2,400 was raised for that. There were a couple other reports that were in there, but we do share the minutes from that. So if anybody's interested, you can go ahead and look those up for that. Okay, voices. I know that we're going to skip over to boosters. Does Julie happen to be on here for any kind of update? I do not see her on here. I'm sorry if anybody else, does anybody else have any input for boosters? Okay, we'll just look to the short kilts for any kind of updates on the boosters and the voices. So is there any other business that anybody would want to present at this time? No, quiet bunch here. Okay, if there's nothing else that we need to add or any other questions, I would say that we had adjourned the meeting at 8:40. I was hoping for just a 1-hour meeting, but we got it in. And I think what Dr. Joynt presented was very valuable. So, all right, thank you very much, everybody, for attending.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Judy.
Judy.
You're
Great
welcome.
meeting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Nancy, for all your help.
Of course.
Mhm.